Hey, who are you? I was just wondering that myself.
Bernadette is somebody who has thrown herself into doing everything for her daughter.
Can I go to Kennedy's house tonight?
Will her mother be there?
No.
Okay, that's okay then.
It's a portrait of the mother-daughter relationship that comes so much from Bernadette's heart.
When I first saw me, I knew that she'd been entrusted to me. Where her daughter's about to leave for school. Oh, I'm getting a panic attack just thinking about it. And so Bernadette's wondering what she's going to do next.
People like you must create. If you don't, you become a menace to society.
Bernadette, we'd like to present to you the reality of your situation. You ran over a mother at school and destroyed a neighbor's home, then had a billboard erected outside this woman's home to taunt her.
I'm not good when exposed to people. Maria Semple has written some really extraordinary characters. The cinnamon isn't going to eat itself.
It was fantastic to hear that Kate Blanchett was going to be Bernadette, and I can't wait to see Bernadette and Audrey together.
I love playing Audrey. She's sort of like a grown-up mean girl.
None of the other mothers like you, Bernadette. Did you know that?
Say amen to that.
Wow.
A lot of people portray Bernadette as crazy, but she's not crazy at all. The world is crazy.
I am on a mission to launch my second act. It's a very big thing when your child is about to move from childhood to adulthood.
This story offers you a chance to see the world in a different way.
Step aside, because I am about to kick the shit out of life. Part of the journey through the film is for the family to re-find one another and for Bernadette to find herself. Having to face who you are to move on to who you might become is often hilarious.
It's a family adventure, I feel, centered around this like very quirky family that has to go on this ride to sort of find each other again. Through Sulin's eyes, I would describe Bernadette as being pretty aloof, not invested in the community. She doesn't fundraise, she barely shows up for school events, and we all know she's got a quirky sense of style and is artsy and doesn't like Seattle. Elgin is the face of Microsoft and is really a charismatic figure. You know, he's like pioneering science, but he's also just like such a charming guy.
Just love the book. It's such rich material, such utterly complex and beautiful characters, you know. Bernadette's such a fascinating person, you know. Strong female, obviously, but I think she speaks for so many people. You know, certain professions, I would think architecture being one, if you don't get your buildings built, you got to do a lot to actually practice your art. And in Bernadette's case, that just isn't happening for her for a variety of reasons. There was the setback in Los Angeles, the move, and then her family, you know, issues, being a mom and all that. So it's really complex, but I think it's a really complex portrait of a middle-aged, you know, into middle-aged woman who is kind of a genius, you know, but who isn't kind of practicing her art. So what that adds up to, you know, is kind of funny and a little scary. You know, it's also kind of a wonderfully complex portrait of a long-term relationship. Parenting, co-parenting, the ups and downs of that. You get a sense LG and Bernadette were something else in the past that they aren't right now. And so it's a portrait of that too. A lot of people say, oh, it's all talking, but I was like, no, that's kind of my sweet spot. I do that. It's like, oh, a lot of dialogue there. I said, You know, I think we can pull that off. And I know Cate Blanchett can definitely pull that off. You need a very compelling person to be giving long monologues. And I've seen Cate do so many things over the years in so many different mediums, you know, that I knew it would be compelling, her doing it. When Megan Ellison gave me the book, she mentioned Cate then. I think Cate was in the air as a possible Bernadette. So once that was in my head, I read it with Cate in mind, and then I could never get off that. I was thinking she's the only person and the only performer currently in the English language worldwide who could pull this off potentially. So once you get that in your head, there's really no other way to see it. It's kind of a crisis moment where there's this accumulation of negative energy, and it's not really, I think a lot of people could portray her as crazy, or as she's the one who's off and deserving of so much that comes her way. But my take has always been she's not crazy at all. The world is crazy. The world isn't adapting to her properly. And that's what happens with, I think, a lot of artists and a lot of really creative people. It's a portrait of the just absolute closeness of a mother-daughter relationship, which I've witnessed in my life from various perspectives, which is really intense, really unique, and something that comes so much from Bernadette's heart and her life situation and everything. But it's also kind of her, she wouldn't see it this way, but it's also, she hasn't found the balance between her obsessive art and her parenting and what kind of was required in Bee's early years.
It's like a family-focused movie about a family coming together over their differences. Specifically, the mother's big difference between her husband and her child, and trying to find how to balance her career with her family and how those two interact in her life. And on the other hand, it's about a woman who stopped creating and has become uncomfortable with the life that she's living, you know, settling down, living in a family, having a daughter, and her finding herself in the process of a kind of mental breakdown as she realizes that she needs to start doing something with her brain or she can't function. She wants to please both of her parents, but she has this relationship with her mom that is just so strong and different from her dad. They both have good relationships, but her and her mom are just so similar in everything, and she wants to please her mom so much, and Bee is just the kind of girl that is like her mom, like kind of a watered down version of Bernadette, more sane, and that's the saneness probably comes from her dad. It's been an amazing experience. One of the best things about Cate is that she's so intelligent. A lot of people would assume that actors, it's just acting, but she analyzes the script in a way that I would never think of. In rehearsal, we had so many days alone with Rick, and she would ask questions about the script, about my character, that I would have never thought of. And she has helped me become Bee because she is Bernadette and she plays Bernadette so well. What I love about Rick is I feel like I am always striving to try new things and do better so that I can figure out what works best for the scene, and he always gives us time to process everything and to go over the lines, and he lets us change the words. Like one of the things that he said was he wants us to be very word specific, but the words can be ours. So during rehearsal, he would go, okay, does that feel right? And I go, well, I kind of like this, or this sounds weird, and I've never been afraid to ask questions or tell him my opinion on something. So it's been a very open and free time in rehearsal, and it's been a very good experience because I felt like I've been free to make Bee my own character.
I would probably describe it as sort of like an epic tale of the the possibilities and I don't know, what are like the negative possibilities? The possibilities of catastrophe of an artist when not given the opportunity to create. When you meet me, I am taking phytoplankton samples en route to Palmer Station. And then I proceed to invite Bernadette to join me in my work. And she takes me up on my invitation, and she gets to learn a lot more about Antarctica, about the Antarctica that she wasn't going to learn about just being there on a tourist trip. It really seemed like she was coming to work as an actor in work mode. You know, she was totally present and herself, and really, you know, just kind of like seeing what the script brought up for her. It was really, really inspiring to watch her work, particularly because I've been so inspired by watching the finished products and, you know, by seeing the work that she's done when it comes out. So to be able to watch her at more or less the beginning of a process was really fantastic.
He's not sure what's going on with Bernadette. Bernadette is exhibiting some pretty odd behavior, but I think he feels like they need to work out their stuff themselves. And he's succeeding at a really high level at work. And I think he feels like the best that he can do as a father is to continue to do a good job at work and be patient with them. And when they're ready to welcome him back into the family, they will. He's primed and ready to go whenever that happens. And it ends up being in the course of the movie. I think Elgin takes the approach of people are in charge of themselves. If they need help, he's there. He's got all the resources in the world to help them. But they need to ask for it. They need to reach out. And Bernadette is someone whose autonomy is really important to her. So the idea of reaching out and saying I need help is just not a part of her vocabulary. Elgin and Bernadette are superstars. They operate at a very high level in their particular spheres. And consequently, when they're around people who are not at their level, they spend a lot of time attending to those people. Sulin is his newest, they call them admins. And essentially it's a person who is in charge of running the operations for the top tier of a team. When we meet Bernadette, she's having a hard time managing her adult life. She's somebody who's been a creative force and an engine for a revolution in architecture for most of her adult life, and is now been without work for 13 years since our daughter was born. And consequently, all of that creative energy has contorted her personality in a way that she's sort of misanthropic, she's unpredictable, her way of managing the house and managing relationships is clumsy, and she's tough to get close to. For LG. She has one singular relationship, and that's with her daughter. He's a fascinating director because he's clearly arrived at a place in his life where he sees great value in the collaborative process, and he has patience with that collaborative process. That is to say, he's not dictating the tempo at which everybody on his team will create at their best level. And so when you begin to understand that and appreciate that, it's a real gift you're being given.
Audrey, I love playing Audrey. It's the first time I've ever played someone who's really unlikable in a, she's sort of like a grown-up mean girl. Well, not sort of, she definitely is. But just playing that woman that, you know, is so caught up in the neighborhood and local society, and of course playing against Kate and playing with Zoe. I mean, it's just been, it's been amazing, and Emma's unbelievable. She's great. I think the wig and the wardrobe for sure help, and you know, she doesn't wear a lot of makeup. There's an uptightness about her casual style that I really find interesting. She reflects Seattle to Bernadette, and also I think Bernadette reflects a life outside of Seattle that Audrey's probably always thought about, because she's been there, her whole family's been there for generations. And who doesn't think about leaving, whether you do or not? And I think she admires Bernadette deep down, because to live a life where you care about what everybody's thinking and saying is just like, God, that seems terrible. I mean, I guess we all at times try to, when things aren't great, maybe you try to make it seem like they are when other people are around or looking at you. But I think Audrey's really trapped in shoulda, woulda, coulda land, and just never really took any risks. And I think that's one of the main reasons I think she really despises Bernadette, is that she's so different. I think Audrey's always been really frustrated and unhappy, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of events that catapult her into being close to having a nervous breakdown. She kind of gets her foot run over, but not really. She lies about that. Her son is not really interested in anything about her, and I think that's a huge heartache that she never expresses. And yes, there's a huge mudslide that comes in and ruins her living room, kitchen, yard, garden, which is like very important to her. And that kind of is the thing that sends her over the edge. As you know, that wouldn't be a fun thing to have happen. But I think because she blamed Bernadette, it just gave her a reason to just unleash everything. I love working with Rick. I love, this set is so easygoing and relaxed, and you know, people always say the director sets the tone, and like everyone's showing up and working really hard and very deliberate in their decisions, and so just happy to be here. And it's not always like that, and we're really lucky to be working and to be here on the set, and you feel that every day here, and I think a lot of that is because of him.
It's a very funny and painful look at a woman who was in a moment of chaos approaching an enormous change in her life, and that all of the garbage and rubbish that comes up from who you thought you'd be, having to face who you are to move on to who you might possibly become. And so we find Bernadette and her family, at that sort of moment of crisis. Maria Semple, and I think Rick in his screenplay has written something that is hilarious in its accuracy, but also it's quite painful and often embarrassing, confronting who you are. Bernadette is confounding. She's fiercely intelligent, hypercritical of the world around her. She's bewildered by Seattle. But I think even more bewildered by who she's become. And she's as critical and as savage on herself as she is on the world around her. Rick Linklater has a very particular way of working. A lot of it's about rehearsal. It's very much about casting for him, and so it doesn't really come to life until you're sort of with the other actors in the room talking about the backstories and what it might be. Bernadette has avoided thinking about 99% of who she is. She's thrown herself, she's experienced profound, deep, public, artistic failure. And I think that that's someone that everyone can relate to. It doesn't have to be an artistic failure, but we sort of expect as adults that we will accept our failures and move forward, and she's not been able to move forward. The family unit is about to change. It's a very big thing when you've been in a long-term relationship and your child is about to move from childhood to adulthood, like B is about to go to boarding school. So their family unit is about to change. And I think that that is something that she's also avoiding thinking about. She's going to have to confront her social anxiety. She's going to have to confront her child coming of age. And she's also going to have to confront that her marriage has been on autopilot. And she's also going to have to confront who she might have to become other than a mother complaining about Seattle. So I think she goes through enormous, tumultuous change, which is often hilarious and often quite painful and embarrassing. Bernadette is somebody who has no friendships, no social life, and so all of her B laughs at all of her jokes. B's the one who she tells all of her stories, and in a way, I think Bernadette's relying on B as being her friend rather than being her daughter. And part of the journey through the film is for Bernadette to accept that her daughter needs to have her own experiences and not, just become the receptacle of all Bernadette's needs. Bernadette and B have such a close relationship that, in a way, LG, as the father, has sort of just slowly been edged out of the picture. So part of the journey through the film is for the father and the daughter to re-find one another. There's a kind of a cataclysmic relationship that she has with her neighbour, and from her perspective, a do-gooder parent, the busybody parent at the school, Audrey, played by the extraordinary Kristen Wiig. Often the person that you have the most antagonistic relationship, you have a lot in common with, and I think that's a bit of a revelation for both of them. I think it's the moments in the film where you see Bernadette being, in a way, most herself. She can more freely talk about her fears and anxieties to a virtual assistant than she can to her husband of 20 years. And she has no friends, so there's not even any opportunity to divest herself of those anxieties and the anxiety of going to Antarctica and all of the stuff that she needs, and her rage at the neighbour and her rage at the parents at the school and her fear at disappointing her daughter. It's all directed to Manjula. It's not just, please go and pick up my laundry. It's, can you please take over the entire organisation of this trip to Antarctica, and I'm losing my mind at the same time. So it's a very, very strange relationship.
FuturePreviews.com. Whoa! Go behind the scenes of movies. Subscribe to Future Flicks YouTube channel.